Cowboy 2025 season is now in the books. They finish at 7-9-1 following their Week 18 loss to the New York Giants. I'm Kyle Youmans. Glad you're with us for more Cowboys update here from the world headquarters of the Dallas Cowboys at the Star in Frisco. That 34-17 loss against the Giants wraps up the first season for head coach Brian Schottenheimer as the head man in Dallas, of course, replacing Mike McCarthy last offseason. Some changes ahead after a disappointing campaign. The Cowboys felt like they had the offense to make a push and to possibly have some success in the NFC East. They finished as the number 2 team in the division, behind, of course, the division champion Philadelphia Eagles, who will go on to the NFC playoff picture. But the defensive side of the ball for the Cowboys was the focal point. Jerry Jones saying in the end-of-season press conference on Wednesday from Frisco that it was a disappointment for the first time that he's seen in quite some time.
This is the first time in my life I've ever been disappointed. Most of the time, I've had more disappointments than I've had highs. And so this certainly is an example of what can happen to you in this game, football. You guys have heard me say that a lot of times. It has fleeting moments of euphoria, and then and those are made special by having hard times. Specifically, I am disappointed that we aren't in the playoffs and aren't in good shape to be in the playoffs. So that is a disappointment.
So a little real and a little tongue-in-cheek from Jerry Jones, but it was a very real decision to move on from defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus after just one season in the position in Dallas. Of course, once a linebackers coach for this Cowboys organization, went on to Indianapolis, had success as a DC with the Colts, then took a head coaching job with the Bears before returning now to Dallas, where he only spends 1 year back in the defensive coordinator role. Dallas defensively allowed 377 yards per game on average. That's the highest in Cowboys history and one of the highest that they've had. Now the Cowboys will move on and hire their 4th defensive coordinator in the last 4 seasons as they look to move on from Matt Eberflus. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer talking about that decision and what they fell short on the defensive side.
It was different things every week. And, you know, some of the struggles in the pass game when we were playing zone, and then some of the struggles in the pass game when we were playing man-to-man. And, you know me, the number one thing that you want to do is stop the run. I thought we actually did that in the latter part of the season. I think where we ultimately came up short was we weren't able to take the ball away. You know, you look back at our shortcomings and the team's playing this weekend, and I agree with Jerry. You know, I'm sick that we're not playing this weekend. We're good enough to play this weekend. Unfortunately, starting with me, we didn't play good enough in terms of the ball.
That's one of the focuses for Brian Schottenheimer as big changes are due on the defensive side. Dallas also allowed the most points in a single season in franchise history with 511. That would rank as the 6th highest in NFL history, and the most, of course, since last season when the Panthers gave up over 500 points in a single season. This Cowboys team going to have to make some big changes because the defense let down and wasted a season of elite offense on the other side of the ball. Brian Schottenheimer in his first year as an offensive play caller put up a top 2 offense in the NFL, only trailing the Los Angeles Rams, who were one of the top seeds in the NFC. They finished with 391 yards per game on average. That's their highest total as a franchise since 2021 when they led the league underneath Mike McCarthy in yards per game. The offensive success is something to look forward to, but also having the ability to draft on the offensive side of the ball is not lost by Stephen Jones in this Cowboys front office.
No, I think that's where you make your biggest mistakes. I mean, we were planning on taking a defensive player when we picked C.D. Lamb. You got to put the board up true. It's got to be quality of player, one after the other. And then when it's your turn to pick, you got to weigh. Now, if there's a guy we really need versus a guy who's sitting in there really close, then we reserve the right to make that decision. Although the offensive guy may be a little higher, we might still go with the defensive guy, but you certainly don't want to reach, just to scratch an itch, if you will, to do that. So we'll put our board up like we always do, and then now, you also got to weed through some of that because whether it's your coaches, whether it's your scouts, everybody knows, and you tend to try to find more good in some of the things that you might need.
Dak Prescott at the quarterback position had quite the season himself. 4,500 yards passing. It's his fourth season with at least 4,000 yards passing and 30 touchdowns. That's the most out of anybody in the NFL since 2019. He finishes third in passing behind just Matthew Stafford, who led the NFL in that category, and Jared Goff, who actually jumped Dak Prescott in the final week of the regular season. Of course, Dak only played the first half of the final game against the New York Giants before Brian Schottenheimer and the Cowboys front office thought it was the best decision to sit him in that final game of the campaign. Now, lots of decisions looming for Dallas this offseason. You got to hire a new defensive coordinator. You have to re-sign some of your top targets on the offensive side of the ball. Guys like George Pickens, guys like Javonte Williams, even Jadeveon Clowney on the defensive side of the ball was mentioned in that press conference as a possible target as a free agent this offseason. Plus, the Cowboys have 2 first-round picks for the first time in quite some time. Here are some of the key dates across the board for the Cowboys this offseason. Everything really gets underway with the NFL Combine. Of course, prior to that, the Shrine Bowl, which will be played at the Star in Frisco, and the Senior Bowl down in Mobile, Alabama. Both some key moments for this Cowboys offseason to scout the players that will also be on display at the NFL Combine. Then it gets to the tags situation, and then you continue on the rest of the offseason up to the NFL Draft in the final weekend of April. 2 first-round picks, one already set in stone as the 12th overall pick in the draft. And then, of course, against Green Bay this weekend, we'll see what the Bears can do to try and help out the Cowboys and push that pick further down the board. Now, no second-round pick, no third-round pick for the Cowboys. They'll pick again starting on day 3. 1 fourth-round pick, multiple fifth-round picks, assuming that they get a couple of compensation picks in the 5th round. 1 for DeMarcus Ware, 1 for Jordan Lewis, who left in free agency last offseason. A couple ways that'll continue to fall into place, and that'll round out the Cowboys' draft picks in 2026. Now, just because it's the offseason doesn't mean there's a shortage of Cowboys content across the board. You can download the Cowboys Now app on Apple TV, Roku, and Fire TV to digest your Cowboys content all offseason long, including the Draft Show, one of the highlighted podcasts throughout the year that starts up this week and gets underway Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time. You got 1 show a week for each of these shows outside of the Draft Show, and here is the weekly podcast schedule across the board. If you have a favorite, go ahead and tune in as the offseason goes along, because there's plenty that is still left to be decided. As we just outlined, coaching changes, free agency, and the draft all still in front of this Cowboys team in 2026. Special thanks to everybody who helped this one come together from the Star in Frisco. I'm your host, Kyle Youmans. We'll see you next time with more Cowboys Update.